Tell us how you see the link to fascism. You know, the word fascism, the anxiety about fascism has become more explicit, particularly in the United States, but elsewhere as well in the last few years. Since austerity was a big reaction to the downturn in 2008 and 9, are we watching a kind of slow motion process whereby the post 2008 austerity is moving us toward fascism? Is that in some sense what you're arguing?
What the capital order describes is the fact that the emergence of austerity happened in a moment of extreme contestation of the capital order, a moment in which the majority of the workers, of the people in the hub of Western capitalism at the time, so Britain and Italy after the First World War, were really demanding a different future, were really rethinking the very foundation of how we organize production and distribution through councils, through cooperatives, through calls of economic democracy that would fundamentally overcome wage relations and private property of the means of production altogether. And what you see is that thus austerity becomes visible as a tool of reaction to these calls for economic democracy, and ultimately how it still functions today to foreclose alternatives to capitalism. So in this setting, fascism is very interesting because you see that if you look at what Mussolini, so the founding father of fascism, was doing in the 1920s, and what his fellow colleagues were doing in Britain, the cradle of liberal capitalism, in the same years, what you notice is actually that these comfortable binaries that contemporaries tend to use, by which, of course, there's liberal capitalist democracy on the one side, and then we have these fascist exceptions, which are clearly the opposite of liberalism that emerged historically. Well, this idea that there's that we're talking about polar opposites, ideological institutional worlds, crumbles if we focus on austerity. And what you actually see is that fascism in Italy strengthened its rule, became legitimate as an authoritarian government, thanks to its capacity to implement austerity, because this was allowing fascism to look good in the eyes of the liberals, both within Italy and the international liberal elite, people like Montagu Norman at the Bank of England, JP Morgan Chase, all the financial world in Britain and the United States in that moment was applauding Mussolini because Mussolini was the most efficient student of austerity, being able to apply privatizations, massive privatization, cuts in wages by decree, cuts in social expenditures, layoffs of public employees, dear money, all of the austerity Trinity package. So I think this is what's interesting, is that the story that the capital order tells is a story that has us wonder, how distant is supposed liberal capitalism that we pride ourselves with respect to these fascist tendencies? Because actually what you see is it's a matter of priorities. So austerity is advanced and advocated for by all of the economic experts, our mainstream colleagues, as, you know, a necessary tool to achieve economic growth and balanced budgets and to tame inflation. But really what you see if you adopt a class analysis lens is that what matters here is something much deeper and something much more essential to preserve the very foundation of the possibility to even have capitalism in place, which is the fact that people cannot try to overcome wage relations. People need to accept their conditions of precarious labor power to be sold on the market. And this is something that is more important than anything, and that also shows how fascism is all about that. Fascism has been about repressing wages, and this has also happened in liberal democracies.
Wonderful, Clara. This is really very, very helpful.